Okay, we're recording.
Excellent. Well, good morning. Going to call the meeting of the Municipal Accountability Review Board for Thursday, June 10th. Thank you for joining today. I just want to provide some very brief opening remarks. Just want to recognize the outstanding leadership of the governor and the leaders of the state for what is a historic bipartisan budget that passed both chambers this week. When it comes to the work that we're doing here for our municipalities that are under state oversight, this budget includes significant investment in cities and towns with $180 million of additional muni aid. Great benefit to our cities and towns that have a lot of tax exempt property and an opportunity to make up for some of the years where we were not able to make investments. When you couple that with the significant federal resources that have been provided through the American Rescue Plan Act, this is an incredible opportunity to strengthen our cities and towns and to make it some investments that will hopefully lead to lasting economic growth. So I just want to thank the team that's been here today at the Plow working with our municipalities and looking forward to seeing these resources be put to very good use. With that, I want to see if my co-chair, Ms. Shaw, if you have any opening remarks.
I would just add to the kudos, Madam Secretary, that you and the OPM team leading the budget negotiations was a material part of that success. So your name and the team's name should be added to that list.
Thank you so much, Christine. The team is weary, but we're glad it was a good product. So we have a little bit more work to do to get implementers done, but we're all spiking the football today, and thank you for that as well. So we're going to move on to our public comment period. If you are here and you're a member of the public and you're wishing to speak, please do identify yourself, give your name and your city of affiliation, and you can be provided with 2 minutes for public comment. With that, do we have any members of the public wishing to comment today? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes for May 13th, 2021. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
I'll second.
Very good. Motion's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Great, seeing none. Julian, over to you for roll.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. Waxenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Biller?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Mr. Falsigno?
Yes.
Ms. Shaw?
Yes.
Secretary McCaw?
Yes.
And are there any other board members who have joined that I did not mention? Then that is everybody.
All right, thank you, Julian. So we're moving on to the Town of Sprague. Our first agenda item is a subcommittee update. We've had a very efficient morning. We just had a special subcommittee meeting at 9 a.m. today to discuss and make a recommendation regarding the 5-year action plan for fiscal year 22 to 26. So with that, we're going to move right into our second agenda item to provide an update on the 5-year plan. Julian, over to you to provide us with a highlighted summary.
Yes, thank you. The subcommittee reviewed a 5-year plan that was submitted in May and featured relatively assumptions that are generally consistent with the assumptions that have been built into the prior approved plans. Grand list growth, conservatively projected at no growth, which is consistent with the prior plans. It does reflect the growth that was recognized in the October 2020 grand list. State aid is held flat throughout the 5-year planning period. And you can see that the expenditure assumptions that are outlined in the table that the town provided are all in alignment with previously approved plans. The town is projecting to increase its fund balance. It should emerge from deficit territory at the end of this fiscal year and then continue to grow over the 5-year period. The original plan that the town presented was modified at the request of the subcommittee to show and to build in some progress towards eliminating or reducing the deficit in the capital non-recurring fund as well. And so the plan that was reviewed by the subcommittee earlier this morning and is before the board now reflects that plan to eliminate much of the deficit that has been carried forward in the capital non-recurring fund. The net result to the general fund in the 5-year plan is shown in a table on the very final page of their 5-year plan, and it shows the town's fund balance increasing steadily over the 5-year period and reaching just shy of 5% of expenditures by the final year of the plan at 4.8%. And that's sort of a quick summary of what was presented. The subcommittee did recommend approval by the full MARB, contingent upon approval by the local Board of Selectmen. And that concludes my summary.
Excellent. Thank you, Julian. Ms. Kennison, do you have any further comments on the 5-year plan?
I do not. It is a good, solid plan. It's actually favorable compared to what we've had, in the past. And so I definitely support this plan, Secretary.
Thank you. Discussion.
Bob White, a quick question. Based on the projected, the elimination of the deficit, is Sprague starting to be on the runway to leave our oversight? Would it be like 23 to 25 if they can maintain what they're trying to do? They may not have to, gather with us any further. And what else
Bobby,
needs to be done?
Bob, I believe it's 3 years of no deficits or no reliance on the state. So Julian and Kim, I believe it was fiscal year 20, correct me if I'm wrong, where the state provided the resources to support the cash issue and the fund balance issue.
Correct.
So in my mind, that means we'd get through the fiscal year closing June 3rd, 2023, and then they would be eligible for to be free from MARB intervention, which I'm sure
They
all
also,
these
their MOA has a payback based on their fund balance of.
That's
So
correct.
go ahead. So essentially that would be the 3 years non-deficit, non-funding, non-state funding would be 24 to 26.
That it would be effective in fiscal year 2024.
Okay. Starting the ring. Okay.
That's correct.
That just, I would just.
Bob, I believe you froze on my end for your last part of your comment.
He froze with me too.
Oh dear. It wasn't important.
Very good. Thank you, Bob. Any other discussion on Sprague's 5-year plan? They're on a solid trajectory. Discussion or comments? I hear someone trying to speak, but it's a little unclear. Okay, well, seeing that there's no further discussion, we have done our due diligence. Sprague has done a great job at strengthening this 5-year plan. Their new assumptions are sound, which is one of our statutory responsibilities. They're strengthening their position from a fund balance perspective. They're clearing slowly the deficit in the capital non-recurring. We've all agreed that this is a sound plan. So with that, I would entertain a motion for approval of the Town of Sprague 5-year plan for fiscal years 22 through 26, contingent upon approval by their local board. And if there is someone who'd like to move that motion, I'd be greatly appreciative.
So moved.
Thank you, Mark.
And I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, seeing none. Julian?
Mr. White,
Yes.
Mr. Waxenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Biller,
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton,
Yes.
Mr. Felsigno,
Yes.
Ms. Shaw,
Yes.
Secretary McCaw.
Yes.
Are there any other board members that joined the meeting that I didn't mention?
Yeah, Julian, I'm here. Pat Egan, yes.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes. Great work to the Town of Sprague. Moving on to the review and discussion of the monthly financial report for April. I'll turn it over to Sprague to provide us with a brief overview.
Good morning. Our total revenues for this year are currently at about 96% of the budgeted amount, which is down a little bit from last year, but that is reflected because we had MARB funding and a lease revenue that came in last year, so that we anticipated we'd be a little bit lower on that. So we're right where we expected to be. Taxes for the period are at 99% of the budgeted amount, which is at a par for the previous years. And our expenditures are also moving right along at the expected levels and the same as the previous years. And we don't expect any major changes with that.
Thank you. Any discussion? First, Selectman, I have one question with respect to Board of Education expenditures. And I'm noticing the lapsing fund in the Board of Education line. Is there someone on your team who can comment on that, please?
I'm not sure if they're on the call, the Board of Education.
Michelle is on.
I'm on.
Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning. Are you referring to our forecasted balance?
And yes, I'm comparing your year-to-date as to budget. Actually, what is your forecast for Board of Education?
Our forecasted balance for the end of this fiscal year will be around 175,000 to 185,000. Primarily, we saw a savings in our salary and benefit lines. That's really what's driving our reserve for this year.
And with respect to the town or municipal expenditures, are there any assumptions surrounding use of stimulus dollars to meet these expenditures? Are you reflecting any of the municipal CRF that the state provided in these lists?
I don't believe any of that is reflected in the budget, no.
Very good. Any other questions on the monthly financial report?
I just want to give you an update, Secretary, to make you aware that the Board of Ed had planned to provide the town with their a surplus and add to the fund balance at the end of the year. And at that time, it was projecting 180K.
Thank you, Kim. All right, well, it looks like you're on a good track with the current fiscal year and making progress in that regard. So if there are no further questions or discussion on the financial report, we will conclude our work with the Town of Sprague today. Any other questions or discussion from the MARB members? Okay. All right, excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will, thank you. Have a good day. We'll move on to the City of West Haven. Mayor Rassi's on with Frank Saplinski and her team. In the materials, the first agenda is the subcommittee update. We have a written update that has been provided in the meeting materials, which is focused primarily on the 5-year plan. The subcommittee did meet earlier this morning to review and make a recommendation concerning the 5-year plan. I'm going to turn it over to Julian to give us an update on where the subcommittee landed today and the major components of the plan. Julian?
Yes, the subcommittee reviewed the plan. After having reviewed it at previous meetings, the subcommittee had asked for the city to take a look at the potential impact from making assumption changes in the fire pension fund actuarial valuation that is in the process of being completed now, and specifically to identify whether those assumption changes were likely to have an impact on the required pension contributions through the 5-year planning period, because the 5-year plan pension contributions were built on long-range projections from the last valuation report. The city reached out to Milliman to get some guidance on what the likely impact of those value assumption changes might be, which were specifically a reduction in the discount rate from 6.75% to 6.5%, and an extension of the amortization period from 12 years to 15 years. The city completed that analysis, which we'll get into further detail on in the discussion around the 5-year plan that was presented to the subcommittee, and the subcommittee, by a vote of 5-1, voted to recommend to the full MARB approval of the 5-year plan contingent upon city council approval.
Great, that's a perfect segue into review, discussion, and possible action on the 5-year plan. As Julian indicated, the plan has been reviewed thoroughly over several meetings. City's been very responsive for follow-up information requests from the subcommittee. The plan is sound with respect to its assumptions surrounding state revenues for West Haven. For the city, I just want to note that the budget does provide an estimated $3 million of additional non-education aid, and that is a part of the tiered pilot that has been approved by the legislature and will be signed by the governor. In addition, West Haven First Center is slotted to receive an additional 1.7 million, Allingtown over 700,000, and West Shore Fire over $400,000. So any assumptions surrounding use of state aid and potential reliance on additional funds in the state budget are certainly sound decisions and do not pose any concerns from OPM's perspective. From a fund balance perspective, we continue to see improvements. Both the general fund and fire fund had negative balances at the end of fiscal year 2018. General fund balance is expected to exceed 5% by the end of fiscal year 2023 and reach more than 6% by the end of the 5-year plan. So very sound progress on fund balance. Fire fund balance is over 20% and certainly in a very strong position. We believe that the revenue projections are based on modest assumptions. Baseline growth is very conservative, 1%, growth of less than 0.1% in the grand list, with some adjustments for known development projects. The city clearly is pushing hard for economic development and recognizing the expiration of tax abatement agreements. The city has reflected savings on the debt service side of the house as bonds are being paid off pertaining to police pension. And with respect to the fire pension valuation, Julian, you touched upon it, but if there's anything else that you want to go through for the board to make sure they're comfortable with the assumptions, please feel free to do so.
I think the summary table that was provided um, lays out the analysis effectively. The estimated impact of adjusting the discount rate was projected for the 5-year period, and it determined that the pension contributions that the city currently has programmed into the 5-year plan would accommodate a change to the discount rate. Again, based on the estimates that Milliman provided for preliminary analysis. If the city were to also make the change, or if the actuarial firm also changed the assumption for the amortization period, that would have a favorable impact on the future ADEX and would actually accelerate the city's progress on the funded ratio. And that's sort of the very high level conclusions drawn from the analysis. We're awaiting the final valuation report, which would be issued probably August, September timeframe, I believe.
One other thing, Secretary.
Yes, please.
I think it would be important to note in the actuarial report as of July 1st of 2019, Milliman was projecting a funded ratio of 43% as of 2026, with the additional money that is not included, but it is included in the 5-year plan, but not included in Milliman's original evaluation from 19. Additional $2.4 million would be added. So from a funded ratio of 43%, they would be more closer to, a 50% mark should they make all of the payments as planned. So that would put them in a far more favorable spot.
Thanks, Kim. Questions and discussion?
Bob White, I'm in favor of the plan. Just a question. I really think it's prudent to throw more money into the pension, but I'm wondering if there's any conversation about allocating some of that money to OPEB, because that seems to be in more serious trouble. Again, that's a town decision as to where to put it. Either of them would be, in my mind, prudent.
Mayor Frank?
Yes, Mr. White, we have had those discussions. There is a line item in the Allentown financial plan to include an OPEB contribution as well. I have spoken to a couple of individuals. We are in the process of consolidating, as you know, the oversight of our pension funds, et cetera. Initial feelings are that we can incorporate the OPEB fund as part of that overall investment strategy. So the city is moving forward, and that is absolutely on our radar.
Terrific. Good. Thank you.
Could I just ask a follow-up, just to sort of put a finer point on it? And I think what Mr. White was referring to perhaps was the increase in the pilot grant, which is certainly tremendous good news for West Haven and for municipalities generally. But is that your game plan with respect to pilot, is to look at pensions and OPEB as sort of a first area to make sure you're doing everything you need to get those plans shored up?
Absolutely. The internal service funds are of concern to the city. So any additional funding that we have that we can safely, without jeopardizing the operating budget, the council will certainly have a discussion around allocating those funds towards the internal service fund deficits.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have a question about the consolidation of the oversight of the various pension plans. Can you share your expectations on when you expect to have final selection and when the consultant whatever consultant is successful, when they can begin their work?
Sure, absolutely. I've spoken to Attorney Kieran on this. We did not receive sufficient responses to the original RFP, so he has put it out again. But the goal is to have somebody selected very shortly and get them in place. Personally, I'd like to see somebody in place uh, before the end of the first quarter of the fiscal year. Don't know if that's possible, but I think it's certainly a valid target to achieve.
And to be clear, the RFP seeks advisory services of a consultant, an investment consultant? Is that correct?
Right now, we have one investment consultant overseeing the police pension plan, another firm overseeing the Allingtown Pension Fund, and then along with the OPEB trust that's been established, what we'd like to do is to put all of those funds under one umbrella. And that way too, right? We should hopefully see some synergies as far as administrative costs.
Economies of scale are good things.
Gotta love it.
Great. Other discussion? Okay, is there a motion to approve the City of West Haven's 5-year plan contingent upon City Council approval?
So moved, Bob White.
Thank you, Bob.
And
Second.
Thank you, Tom. It's been
actually, that was someone else. I was gonna second, but
That was
Okay.
Dave Biller. I was quick to at that time.
all right, David, thank you. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Julian, over to you, please.
Mr. White,
Yes.
Mr. Waxenberg,
yes,
Mr. Biller,
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton,
yes,
Mr. Falsigno,
Yes.
Mr. Egan,
Abstain.
Ms. Shaw,
Yes.
Secretary McCaw.
Yes.
Are there any board members I missed? Okay, that's everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes, and I just want to congratulate West Haven on a lot of progress over many years. Keep up the good work, and this is an outstanding plan. I'm sure you're going to stay the course. And I just want to thank the committee for your hard work and supporting West Haven to getting to this place. This is a great time to recognize the progress and the hard work that has been underway for many years. So with that, we turn to our final item for West Haven, which is just a monthly financial report for April 2021, and we'll turn it over to you, Frank.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. So revenues through 10 months are at roughly 97% of expected annual target. That is in line with prior years. Tax collections are coming in at around 98.7%, which is higher than last year. The 5-year average at this point is just north of 99. So again, within targets. The lien sales for fiscal 21 are scheduled. They've been sent to the council for their agenda for this coming Monday. So that should complete the process around the lien sales. The forecasts that you have include an assumption that the lien sales will go through, so there's no projected dip in the tax revenues, assuming that it does not pass. From the expenditure side, again, we're in line with prior years. Still taking a conservative approach as far as the city goes. The current forecast includes an assumption that all of the contingencies will be spent. Of course, as those monies are not needed, the forecast will be reflected. We are currently showing a projected surplus for the year on both the city and the Board of Education. The Board of Ed has confirmed a $145,000 give back that they are expecting to give back to the city at the end of the year. So again, projecting a surplus there. The West Haven Sewer Fund is in a similar position, very strong compared to revenues against prior years. Containment around the cost has been effective. We are projecting a surplus there as well. Again, right now, the forecast includes spending of all the contingency monies and capital improvements. We'll know more as I see, as I see the month progress. Allentown, we are currently projecting a break-even point for Allentown. We are in the analysis of trying to determine what their COVID impact was to see if we can move anything out of Allentown into the city, since we have the funds on our books to cover COVID costs. The last item is an update on the audit issues, which are now being included as part of the normal monthly financial package. You'll note that still two items that are in the yellow, one being the pension plans that we talked about earlier, and the other being the approved vendor list for the city. So we do have a new full-time purchasing person on board. He has begun. He and I have had conversations. We have begun the process of trying to change the purchasing and accounts payable procedures here within the city to tighten those up and to streamline wherever possible. So he has begun that. There is a project underway to do a substantial vendor cleanup for the vendor master. What we have found is due to lack of overall process in the past, we have vendors that are in the system, in one case, 4 different times for the same vendor, using various spellings of the name and or addresses. I think where we came off the rails there was no process that required a W-9 to set up the vendor within the system. It had never been, I'll say, demanded in the past. So obviously, when you create a vendor within Munis, and if you try to duplicate the tax ID number, it's not going to let you. So we have put that into place. We have already gotten pushback from individuals who have said, well, we've never needed that in the past. Well, just because you've done it that way in the past doesn't mean it's the right way. So we are making progress, and I look forward to giving you updates on that as we move forward.
Thank you, Frank. Frank, with regards to the general fund, it looks like you're projecting revenues of 166 million and expenditures of 165 million just for the city municipal side. So are you projecting a $1 million surplus based on this report before factoring in contingency?
958,000.
Thank you, sir. And your budgeted contingency is around $4 million. Has some of that been spent? On page 6, I do see a April year to date. I'm just curious on how much of the contingency really has been utilized versus is remaining for the fiscal year.
Some of that has been within that contingency area. That is where we are capturing all of the COVID-related costs as well. So on page 8, you'll see that breakout between what is COVID related and what is truly contingency / other. I would say that there's probably $400,000 of pure contingency that if isn't needed, we should be able to let it flow to the general fund balance.
Okay. You are including in your revenues the 1.2 million of COVID relief funds, right?
That is correct.
Okay. So against the 5.2 between, yep. So you really do have the 1.2 in the revenue. So at this point, is it fair to say then that on the expense side of the house, there's about 1.5 million of contingency that has not yet been confirmed to be needed for the fiscal year.
I'd have to go back and do a deep dive analysis, but it should be close to $1 million, I would think.
Okay. All right. So you're looking to close somewhere up to $2 million in surplus.
If everything falls through correctly, yes.
Understand. Other questions or discussion on West Haven's monthly financial report?
The town side of the budget, West Haven, I have to compliment as to their oversight and transparency as to how they're operating. My concern is the Allentown piece. Doing an analysis over time that they provided here, it appears that this is a concern. It's a concern that I've had and members of the board have had since the beginning about these separate fire districts, and Allentown is the only one we have specific data on, but the other ones are similar, I guess. And specifically, the administrative side of the budget was about 70%, 60% administrative versus operations total back in 2018-19. It's now over 70%, in large part due to the administrative side, in large part due to the health insurance and pension. Health insurance has gone up over 100% during that period of time. Now, I understand health insurance to a degree. There could have been additions, et cetera, but it's clear that the town made its move to stabilize and mitigate future health insurance costs, which are helping its long-term prognosis, if you will, fiscally. My concern is if the fire districts do not follow suit, that there's going to be a significant reckoning. You just can't keep going up 100% every 7 years of health insurance costs without changing, quote unquote, something, whether it's retiree benefits, whether it's the plan itself as the town does. And of course, the pension they are addressing over the long term, which is an excellent job. I don't know, we're not privy to the other two fire districts regarding their pensions and their plans. At least I have not seen them. They may be in the works. So I'm just concerned, as I'm sure Frank may be, that some of these long-term obligations like the OPEB, which I know they're putting 50,000 aside, but 50,000 aside when you have a significant long-term liability ever increasing is something that needs to be, in my mind, addressed. Otherwise, it's going to be a continued drag somewhere, whether it's within the Allentown budget or within the town side budget, because those, I mean, on the town side, over the same period of time, the health insurance costs went up 65 to 70% because of the change. On the fire side, went up over 100%. So I'm just concerned, and hopefully, and I'm sure Frank has communicated those concerns to the fire district chiefs as well, to try to see what future plans they might have regarding health insurance and pension contributions with their work. I just had to get that stated for the record.
Frank, is there any clarification that you'd like to provide?
Sure. So we are continuing to try to move Allentown towards the state partnership plan. As you recall, we brought a contract adjustment before the MARB earlier this year that did include moving them to the partnership plan, and that was unfortunately voted down by the MARB. So we are still in discussions with them. I think the ultimate goal is to move them into the partnership plan, because they came up with the same conclusion, Mr. Waxenberg, that healthcare costs are running rampant. The better we can control that, the better off we are as an overall entity.
This is Michael Milone. Can I add something to that?
Secretary, please do.
I remember that meeting about MARB examining that movement and the rationale we had for rejecting it. Now, their contract is up or in negotiations soon, if not now. My concern is that the town, and I'm sure the town will try to negotiate movement into the state partnership plan. My concern is that we not get into the habit that West Haven has had in the past, which is to go a 1, 2, 3 years without in negotiations without any changes, and then come before MARB for a contract settlement that is retroactive 2 years. There is binding arbitration. There are specific timelines that you as a manager, as management, can call for. So if you get into collective bargaining, and I'm just hypothesizing, and there appears to be some impasse, specifically in the area of healthcare, I would encourage you to take advantage of the state law to expedite that process and get a final decision for the future.
This is Michael Malone. Can I add something to this?
Yes, Michael.
Okay, thank you. Mr. White and members, aside from this discussion, I have been working along with the city staff with the 3 fire districts to put together a report that has been sent to you, but there has to be one modification to it. So you will be getting a report from Mayor Rossi, which summarizes the progress that the districts have made, the 2 independent districts along with Allentown, and a 3-year fiscal plan for the 2 independent districts. The contracts come up for renewal. The labor contracts come up for renewal a year from now. The Tri-District Committee has been formed as of about 7 months ago, and one of the things that they plan to do starting late summer, early fall, is to collaborate on a replacement health plan for each of the districts that does a lot of the things that we were successful doing with the city. They are looking at the partnership, and they're looking at other opportunities for savings. So they're very aware of that, and that is a priority of theirs. Also, when you get the 3-year plan of the 2 independent districts, you will see that they have made additional contributions for the OPEB liability, just as one of the districts has also made additional contributions to the pension plan. The 2nd district hasn't, only because they had a valuation done recently and they have a level funding option, which they're adhering to. So they're looking at the OPEB, they're looking at the pension, but they're also going to be looking to save some funding in the medical benefit area as they negotiate this contract next year. And they're working very collaboratively. And I think, at least based on what the fire chief has said, the Allentown district and their membership have still been very receptive and are still very receptive to the state partnership plan. We couldn't get a gauge on the other 2 independent districts, but they are pursuing that option as well, as long as it's financially feasible for them to go that route. So there is attention being given to this. There's the Tri-District Commission that's been set up. And so there's a coordination of effort and a realization that there are some options that they need to pursue as a group.
As well as purchasing as opportunities. So, the 3 departments have gotten together. Their goal is to standardize on a single apparatus provider, with the assumption that by able to go to this apparatus, whoever wins the contract, telling them that they expect to order, between the 3 departments anywhere to 5 engines over the next several years, that should be able to get them some purchasing discount power. Again, economies of scale.
Other discussion or questions? All right, great. Seeing none, that's the last agenda item for the City of West Haven. Congratulations to you, Mayor Rossi. Thank you, Frank, and West Haven team.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to the City of Hartford, and I believe we're joined today by the mayor and finance director and budget director today. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great. First item on the agenda is the subcommittee update. There is a written update in the meeting materials. We have reviewed the city's 5-year plan starting in April and continuing into May, requesting supplementary information, including a mitigation plan to address projected budget deficits. The city did present a detailed plan, which we will talk about in the next agenda item. We do have a number of items. The other item that was touched upon in the last subcommittee is the Hartford Police Union Memorandum of Understanding to address salaries and to ensure that they can attract and retain police officers. That is a later agenda item. So we will move directly into review, discussion, and possible action on the 5-year plan. Julian, I'll turn it over to you for brief highlights, and you can always kick it to the city if you'd like to provide more detail.
Yes, thank you. As you mentioned, the subcommittee has conducted a thorough review of the city's updated 5-year plan and had actually requested a number of items as follow-up items, including the mitigation plan. There's a detailed itemization of mitigation measures that are on the table for the city that was included as a supplementary item to the plan itself. Some of the other items that the committee had asked for were some detail on the grand list projections, which were also provided. You'll note in the assumptions for the plan that the city is taking a fairly conservative approach to growth projections in the grand list, including the upcoming reval. And the city or rather the subcommittee did vote to recommend approval of the 5-year plan by the full MARB, and I will let the city fill in any other highlights that they'd like to hit.
Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning, Secretary McCaw. I think the only other thing that is worth filling in is that, as you know, our 5-year plan initially assumed the $11 million that had been in the governor's proposed budget, but not the additional 11 that was funded from the pilot bill. In the budget that was adopted, that additional 11 is included. So that we now, that element of what was our mitigation plan now becomes part of our 5-year plan.
Thank you. For clarity, if you're looking at the city's efficiency and other mitigation plan, certainly with the approval of the tiered pilot, the city is essentially in balance without any significant mitigation through fiscal year 2023. That state pilot increase line $11 million reflects the city getting to 22 million. 11 that was in their base and an additional $11 million. So these are certainly sound assumptions as we approach fiscal year 2024. The additional mitigation that would be required, the city has identified a number of efforts to achieve that balance. I would note, as Julian indicated, that the analysis on the reval suggests that that could be more favorable than the conservative assumptions that are built in. The city does identify other tax collection efforts, energy efficiency, and other strategies that could bring the budget in balance. As I look at the 5-year plan, it really seems that once you get to fiscal year 2024, Mayor, the challenge and the growth in expenses really begins to moderate. It's much lower. You look at the differences in some of those shortfalls from 23 to 24, it's a $2 to $3 million challenge, which is something that clearly the city can overcome. So this is a plan that is fully balanced through 2023, has some mitigation work in 24, which a reval more favorable than what's in the baseline assumptions could get you over the hurdle. And then beyond that, you have really modest growth and mitigation that will be required. So with that, let's open it up for further discussion. That is very rare to not hear. Mr. White, are you trying to talk, but you're on mute?
No, I wasn't. For a change, I wasn't.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments or discussion? All right. Seeing none, then we are going to look for a motion to approve the 5-year plan contingent upon city council approval.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Who is that seconding?
David Biller.
Thank you, David. All right. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All right. Seeing none, over to you, Julian.
Mr. White,
Yes.
Mr. Waxenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Biller,
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton,
Yes.
Mr. Felsigno,
Yes.
Mr. Egan,
Yes.
Ms. Shaw,
Yes.
Secretary McCaw.
Yes.
Any other board members that I did not mention? And that's everybody.
Great. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is review, discussion, and possible action regarding a tentative agreement between the City of Hartford and the Hartford Police Union. Turn it over to you, Mayor, for a brief overview.
Thank you, Secretary McCaw. So I think a number of the members around the committee are already familiar with this, but this is an MOU that was reached with the Hartford Police Union and approved by City Council in response to a very, very significant retention challenge that we have had this year. We have long known that our officer pay at the officer ranks, that's distinct from sergeant and above, but at the officer ranks, our pay is nowhere near competitive regionally or statewide. We have not been in a position to address that previously, and it was previously a challenge in recruiting, but really not a significant challenge in retention. What we found over the last year is that a number of towns around the state and around the region have been aggressively recruiting Hartford police officers, in some cases offering some significant bonuses, and in all cases offering significant pay increase. We've lost close to 40 officers, and it is something that we felt it urgent to address. So although the collective bargaining agreement is not open until this time next year, we reached an MOU to increase officer pay to try to bring us more in line with our peer and competitor municipalities. And that's what this agreement represents.
Great. And in your package, you have a wage comparison document that shows Hartford's starting annual pay at around $53,900, lower than Waterbury, and certainly their surrounding competitor towns of Newington, Rocky Hill, East Hartford, Weathersfield, Windsor, and that is on page 5 of the package on the police union memorandum of agreement. Questions or discussion?
Bob White, I'd just like to report to the full board that at the subcommittee meeting, the chief of police, Thody, was just terrific in terms of outlining the problem and the challenges facing the urban police department. He was very transparent, seems on top of what's going on, and just made a compelling case for these adjustments. So I heartily support it, and I appreciate the city making him available for such a length of time, even though he's a Yankee fan.
Mayor,
I
on to Chief Thody.
I do agree with Mr. White's comment. Just for the record, I do want to make you aware that this increase in the calculation of approximately $2.56 million in FY22.
Thank you, Kim. Any other discussion or comments?
And Jen, if you want to just confirm that this increase is already factored into our 5-year plan.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Great. All right. Any other discussion? All right. Is there a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between Hartford and the Hartford Police Union?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All right. Seeing none, over to you, Julia.
Mr. White,
Yes.
Mr. Waxenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Beller,
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton,
Yes.
Mr. Falsigno,
Yes.
Mr. Egan,
Yes.
Ms. Shaw,
Yes.
Secretary McCaw.
Yes.
Are there any other board members that have joined the meeting? Then that's everybody.
Great. Item passes. Finally, we have, second to last, we have a review of various non-labor contracts. And we'll turn it over to the city to give us a brief overview.
Thank you, Secretary. This is Jen Hockenhall, and with us we have several folks within our group ready to present to you contracts related to our health insurance, to some of our senior center operators, as well as a summer or youth summer program. So I'm not sure, I have not actually been to a meeting where we presented contracts. So do we share the slides with you, or do they just speak to it? I'm sorry, I don't know the protocol here.
You can speak to it. The members have the slides. If you could just describe the contracts and the cost and the extent to which it's funded within the budget, maybe if there's a % increase or if it's flat funded, that would be great.
Okay, great. Yeah, so thank you. I will actually turn the first one is for Cigna. What we're really talking about here is just the admin costs. They did go out for RFP. So there are many numbers on the slides, but the admin costs are really what we are talking about, and that is funded through the general fund. Rich Pokorski, I believe, is on and ready to speak to this one directly. Rich, are you still on?
Yes, I am here.
There you are.
Good morning, Secretary McCaw
Good morning, Rich.
and members of the committee. So the city was at the tail end of its current existing TPA contract for medical and dental services. End of last year, Siegel, which is actually the state's healthcare consultant as well, issued the RFP on our behalf. And we were happy to say that our existing TPA was the winner of the contract and was awarded the contract for the next 5-year duration. So as Jen was mentioning, part of it is, well, obviously the cost of claims is the major factor, but for this particular pricing, we were actually very pleased to see that Cigna was guaranteeing a flat fixed amount for the duration of the contract over 5 years at $825,000, which is actually going to be it's actually less than the existing administrative services costs. But in addition, we did a best and final, which actually reduced our costs for the admin by about $22,000 a year. So we'll be paying less per year for admin costs over the next 5 years. So that was good news to us. As well as our stop loss came in at flat for the first year. That was guaranteed. And, in comparison to vendor 2, it came out to about 500,000 less on the admin costs, a couple hundred on the stop loss. The stop loss is projected at 10.5% year over year because they can't price that in until they have our claims. So overall, if we did nothing or if we went to vendor 2, it would be about $8 additional million cost to the city if we went to vendor 2. On the dental side, we'll save we went to a fixed, we're getting a fixed rate fee because we went fully insured on that. So that'll save us about $460,000 or so over 3 years versus a self-insured way for payment. So overall, we were happy about the program that Cigna's providing. They did In best and final, they did increase our benefits as far as, to our wellness account. We have an on-site wellness coach here 2 days a week that they're going to pick up the cost on. Additional wellness benefits is in regards to a more robust program that they offer that we won't pay for. We have an additional maternity services program for newly expectant moms that they're going to pick up the cost on. So overall, I thought it was a great bid, especially during the time where during the pandemic, we did have bids and people were interested and we're happy to say that Cigna is going to continue to be our carrier.
Thank you, Rich. Any questions or comments from MARB members?
Just this is Tom Hamilton. Question on the dental. It's a little odd to see the fully insured plan coming in lower than the self-insured plan on dental, because normally you don't think of dental having a whole lot of exposure to really large claim, large claims and fluctuation in claims. So I'm just curious whether your consultant gave you any information about why that, why the numbers came in as they did. Why did you experience savings on a fully insured dental plan compared to self-insured?
Our dental program is about 2 million, 2.2 a year. We're actually down 5% this year. I think it was a retention issue. I thought that, whether they may have known it or not, there was a potential to carve away the dental to another carrier. We asked because there was additional savings with another carrier. The issue is that the city of Hartford took real, important steps to reduce the cost of healthcare. And number one, it was through enabling legislation at the Capitol that allowed us to jump on the pharmacy program at CVS with the state of Connecticut contract, which significantly reduces our RX spending costs. And then Secretary McCall may recall that we went and transitioned through enabling legislation our over 65 population to the state of Connecticut's United Healthcare Plan, which saves about $1.5 million a year. So we've always been looking at potential savings. That being said, that once you start divvying up all the lines of coverage between Cigna, then CVS, then having a potential third administrator for dental, it causes major confusion in regards to employee, utilization of their health plan. And in addition, having dental coincide with the medical, there's a lot of benefits in the data that we see that if there's poor dental health, it reflects in the medical claims. The coordination between dental and medical is important. So we wanted to keep that together. So in regards to how or why it came out less, I'm not sure, but knowing that there was going to be more savings with the vendor number 2 and trying to reduce the possibility of carving out the third line of coverage for employees to have 3 cards in their wallet was problematic. We went back to Siegel and asked, can they price it out on a fully insured basis, which they did happily, and they guaranteed it. And it was a no-brainer. A few shekels, we're missing out on a few dollars extra with carving out to the third vendor. But I think overall it's a wise decision to keep it with Cigna. As far as pricing on what they did on their end and how they got to it, I couldn't say.
Okay. Okay. That's helpful. This is small potatoes in the whole mix of things, and certainly it seems to make the most sense. So thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Rich. Any other questions on the Cigna Medical third-party administrator?
I have one question, Secretary, sorry. Rich, you mentioned that the plan was for a 5-year contract, but your document's saying a 3-year.
It's a 5-year duration.
Okay.
It's 3-year, 1-year renewals, pending council approval, year 3, 4, and 5.
So I have one other question, Secretary, and for the members. Is it possible that we would not need to look at these contracts every single year, since we are looking at the 3-year plan right now, and then we would then see it upon renewal in the future, rather than every single year we get to see the amount that we're looking to approve? But because this is a 3-year contract.
You won't see it next year, Kim.
Okay,
You won't see it again until 3 years from now.
okay. I think in some cases we have been seeing them annually.
If they are executed as annual contracts, but we can go
Okay.
back and take. All right, let's move on to, I don't believe we started with the first one, which was, thank you so much, Rich. As always, you're outstanding. The mayor's lucky to have you. Aetna parking agreement, Jen, do you want to just quickly highlight that parking agreement and get any comments from the board members?
Yeah, actually, I want to turn this over to Maureen at the school, I believe. I thought I saw Maureen on. If not, it's Claudio.
Yes, I'm on.
Hi, Claudio.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. As you know, just to give you a little background, back in 2015, up to 2015, we were leasing the space underneath Interstate 84 from the state. And at that time, our cost was only for security. When the project over I-84 started, we received a letter from Department of Administrative Services that we had to vacate the spot. And the only spot we were able to find that accommodated the number of cars we needed, closest to the Hartford High School, is this lot number 5 on Hawthorne from Aetna. In the documents, you see what our annual cost has been, what our projections are 3 years out, and we continue to negotiate this annually. We have asked Aetna to do a multi-year, and they've been resistant. We have continually try to explore other options, but there isn't much available land around Hartford High where we could accommodate our own parking lot. Is there any questions I can answer?
And Claudio, you've accommodated these cost increases in the Board of Ed budget?
Yes, they're in our general budget.
Questions or comments on the Aetna parking agreement? Capital Workforce Partners, Summer you.
Yes, thank you. And I believe this one will go to Christina Baldwin.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Claudio.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. This is Christina Baldwin. Good morning, Madam Secretary and all of the members of the MARB. Nice to see everyone this morning. So for our Capital Workforce Partners Summer Youth Employment and Learning Program, the Capital Workforce Partners, or CWP, will be serving 368 youth this summer. This is a sole source contract that is renewed annually. So this sole source for FY 2022 is for $1 million, and that has remained the same as last year. And those will be for services covering the time period of July 1st, 2021 through June 30th of 2022. As you may be aware, CWP is the Regional Workforce Development Board. And CWP matches this funding from the City of Hartford with both state and philanthropic funding. This year, CWP will be contracting with several youth-serving organizations, including Blue Hills Civic Association, the Center for Latino Progress, Community Renewal Team, and Our Piece of the Pie. And CWP has also agreed to prioritize our high-risk youth that are incoming 9th graders, those graduating high school seniors, youth with disabilities, DCF-involved youth, low-income youth, and our opportunity youth. The program goals for this year are that 75% of youth will meet or exceed the expectations, and that is measured by the Hartford, our work-based learning readiness standards. Additionally, 80% of the youth will complete the program in its entirety. And finally, 85% of the youth will continue their education and/or enter employment upon completion. So very quickly, last year's results, or this past summer's results. So the first outcome was that 85% would meet or exceed expectations of their supervisors on their work sites based on the employee competency review. And that goal was met with 80% of virtual youth and 7% of youth that participated in site-based learning received a score of 75% or higher. And that was actually a 7% increase over the previous year. 90% of the students indicated that they believed the skills that they learned were very or extremely useful to them later. The second outcome was to have them complete the program with at least 108 hours of program activities and to complete a career portfolio. An average of 78% of the students successfully completed with at least 108 hours of program activity and the career portfolio. The average numbers of hours completed by participants last summer was 118 hours. And at the highest, it was 391.5 hours worked. And then the final outcome this past summer was to continue education and or entering employment at the end of the program. And so there was a 90% target for that. At the end of the program, 85% of the participants plan to return to high school. An additional 5% plan to enter post-secondary education or advanced training. And of the 75% participants that were not enrolled in education during last summer's program, 23 of them, or 31%, were employed or had been hired by their summer youth employment work site. So that is a brief overview of our summer youth employment learning program and our expectations and standards for it this year.
Thank you, Christina. And the contract will be funded at $1 million. Is that flat at the prior year level?
Yes, it is. Yep, that's the same that it was funded in FY 2021. I'm sorry.
I think just interrupt with the possibility, with the likelihood that we will be supplementing it with ARP dollars.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other questions or comments on the Capital Workforce Partners contract?
Yes, curious to know how long this sole source agreement has been with Capital Workforce Partners.
I am not sure on the exact amount of years that it has been with Capital Workforce Partners, but I can definitely find out. I know that it has been in place with Capital Workforce Partners for at least the past 5 years since I've been managing it, but I will find out the exact number of years and let you know.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other discussion, comments?
How many kids participated last year?
So youth that were specifically funded by City of Hartford funding, there were 375 youth. There were a total of 808 Hartford young people that were served with various sources of funding from Capital Workforce Partners combined. So we're able to keep it relatively the same this year. Our goal for this year's contract, as you have a copy of, is 368 youth to be served with city funding. And we were able to do that, working in partnership with CWP in light of the expected increase in minimum wage.
And Christina, remind me, we have returning youth that participate in this program, correct?
We do. Youth may return and participate. It's based on a tiered structure. So, youth can move up in tier and return again to participate in subsequent summers.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions or discussion, Tom?
Yeah, just curious. I'm assuming that for this summer, it will be all in person, but were you able to do this in person last year, or was it some kind of remote work situation for the youth that were in the program last summer?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it was a hybrid structure last summer. So it was both virtual and in person. And a lot of that depended on the work site where young people were placed, if they were able to accommodate in person or if they were doing it virtually. This year will be probably primarily in person, but we are expected to also continue to offer some virtual worksite opportunities.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you so much, Christina. Moving on to the Hispanic Health Council, MyUp program.
Thank you. The next person who will speak is Carmen from HHS, and she has the last 4 to talk about.
Great. Carmen, you have the floor.
You'd think that after 15 months, I'd learn to unmute myself. I apologize. Good morning, Secretary McCaw and committee members. The first contract that I will present to you is for the Hispanic Health Council for the Maternal and Infant Outreach Program. This contract actually went out to RFP earlier this spring, and Hispanic Health Council was the only agency that responded to the RFP. And so we worked with them to ensure that the services that would be provided were on point and as we would expect. The goals for the program for the upcoming fiscal year is to continue doing our work to decrease infant mortality among women in the program and to increase access to health insurance for these pregnant and parenting women, and to increase access to other social support services. We continue to have a very low infant mortality rate as a result of this program, or as a result of the members that are participate in this program. So that is something that we would like to continue to see. HHC serves about 120 pregnant and parenting women in the city of Hartford through the Maternal and Infant Outreach Program. It's a home visitation program. So last year, our home visitors predominantly did their visits via Zoom. And then if there were any supplies or materials that needed to be delivered to an individual's home, our home visitors would make those deliveries to them. The program will run 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. Often we find that our home visitors do remain on call for a lot of their clients, especially if they're, very close to their delivery dates. They tend to remain very connected and very close to their clients. So sometimes those hours are not set in stone. But the contract for FY22 is $230,000 for services from July 2021 to June 30th, 2022, at which time there's opportunity for renewal. And we predominantly focus on pregnant and parenting women who are primarily African American or Latino.
Thank you, Carmen. And is the 230,000 is also a flat contractual amount? Is that correct?
It's actually an increase of about $11,000 from the previous year. In the general fund, our total allotment has remained the same, but our contract, the HHC, increased.
Okay, great. Just want to flag for you that there's some progressive movement on healthcare in the budget that passed the legislature, some expansion. So to expand coverage, there's also more supports through Husky for postpartum care to go beyond 2 months to 6 months, and also some support for undocumented. So I just want to flag that would be complementary to the work you're doing in this program.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Discussions or comments on the MyOp program through the Hispanic Health Council?
Yes, good morning. Curious to know how these participants are kind of followed after they receive support. I imagine it's during pregnancy, right? And so are there services or some transition to supports for the new mothers?
Thank you for that question. So yes, the mothers are followed from prenatal up to 3 to 6 months postpartum, depending. At that time, the workers will, work with them, connecting them to other services, ensuring that they're attending their appointments. We're also looking at, we currently employ a nurse midwife who's our clinician here at the health department. So we are looking at ways to, hopefully increase our clinic services to be able to provide appointments for moms that might not have a medical home. Additionally, we do have a WIC program that is here in the department, along with other social service programs that we, operate. So we connect them to WIC, if they qualify. and help them, there, and WIC will allow them to be, followed for a lot longer than the MyUp program will.
Thank you. Other comments? Thank you, Carmen. Catholic Charities and Parkville Senior Center.
Okay, so the first contract for Catholic Charities is for the Hispanic Senior Center. It's operated by Catholic Charities over on Wadsworth Street. It serves elderly individuals over 60 years of age, and it provides them with access to nutritious foods, physical activity, and social connection, and health services. This year, City Council approved a $30,000 increase to this particular contract to help with operations, to also help provide an increase to the staff that work those senior centers who have not seen an increase in their pay in quite some time. So that is where you'll see, the biggest increase. Again, this contract did not go out to RFP because typically we don't RFP anything. Well, it's self-contained. So Catholic Charities owns the building and runs the program out of that building. So we've typically done a memorandum of understanding with Catholic Charities and sent it to council for approval. You haven't seen this one at a MARB meeting prior because typically our contribution is not over $100,000, but this year, because council approved a $30,000 increase, that's why you all are getting to see this one. Again, the residents are over the age of 60 and are primarily Latino at that site. We've historically worked with Catholic Charities and this Hispanic Senior Center, and we have a one-time increase in the operating budget for FY22. The program goals are to increase social connectivity, to increase the proportion of seniors that access the center, and to provide access to needed services. Any questions?
Looks like you can move on to Parkville, Carmen. Thank you.
Okay, so Parkville is pretty much a mirror scenario of the Hispanic Senior Center. Council, again, this is operated by Parkville Senior Center, Inc. So we typically give a contribution to them. They're looking to serve the same, population, only over at the Park Street location. They also received a $30,000 increase in their budget, and they also provide social connectivity to seniors and, work to increase the proportion of seniors that access the activities and the center and that have access to other needed services.
Thank you, Carmen. And the contract at 107,000 is flat or represents an increase?
This represents an increase of $30,000. So it's the same, a similar scenario to the Hispanic Senior Center.
Very good. All budget within budget.
Yes.
Questions or comments on Parkville? All right, seeing none, we then have the renewals for the North End Senior Center and the South End Senior Center through Blue Hills and Catholic Charities. You can quickly touch upon those and receive any comments, and then you'll be all set, Carmen.
Sure. So for both Blue Hill Civic Association and their operation of the North End Senior Center, and for Catholic Charities for the operation of the South End Senior Center, these senior center buildings are owned by the city of Hartford, and so we subcontract with Blue Hills and Catholic Charities to actually do the operations in our building. This contract, both contracts have a $5,000 increase from the previous year. Last year, council had approved a $25,000 increase for both of these sites. Again, both sites are providing seniors access to, connectivity and socializing, and access to food and other services. We do supplement the programming through grants through the NCAAA. So we supplement the food program, and we also supplement the physical movement, the Keep on Living program through them as well. So full services at the senior centers will open up again for all 4 senior centers that I just presented. Actually, will open up again on June 6th. We've been working closely with the senior center managers to make sure that we are prepped and ready to be, preparing food and serving food, and providing in-person services again, to the seniors who are members of these senior centers. We have talked about, extending those services. We will continue to do some online services for seniors who might still not feel comfortable coming to a congregate setting like that. And we will continue to provide, kind of like drive-through meal delivery services for them as well.
Thank you, Carmen. Any other comments or discussion on the 2 remaining contracts? Okay, great. Thank you so much. And Jen, we will turn it over to you for a review and discussion of the monthly financial report for April 2021.
Thank you, Secretary. I'm going to let the mayor jump in case there's anything he wants to say first, and then I can finish up where he leaves off.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Secretary McCaw. I think the top line on the financials is that we are recording here an additional $2 million improvement since our last monthly update. So a projected surplus of $8.5 million. This reflects favorability in the same primarily in the same areas that we've been flagging all along, including attrition and health. The revenue has also been fairly strong, including increases in license and permit revenue, as well as collections. So it's a $2 million improvement. I will also say that this does not include an unanticipated full payment of a fairly large tax delinquency. There was a multi-year tax delinquency on 50 Morgan Street, which is the old Red Lion Hotel that is being converted to residential. It had been foreclosed upon, it was bank owned, and it was recently purchased. And in that transaction, there was a $3.9 million payment of delinquent taxes. So that was not factored into our budget, and it is not reflected in these improved financials. So we're reflecting here at 8.5, but it will actually be larger than that.
Thank you, Mayor.
That's great news.
Jen, anything else that you want to add to that?
No, the mayor hit all the highlights there, unless there's any questions that I can answer.
Okay. Questions or discussion on the April financial report for Hartford? Okay, you're moving towards a very nice bottom line. So with that, I think that concludes everything we have for the city of Hartford. Thank you so much. We move on to other business. Is there any other business before the MARB today? Well, let me just say, we did great work today. We have three cities and towns with solid 5-year plans moving in the right direction, a historic investment in municipal aid. And I just want to say thank you to all of the board members for your continued work, and to the cities and the leadership of the cities. To see this progress is really great. It's a great way to close out the year. And with that, if no one else has any further remarks, happy to take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Julian will formally make sure we're all in agreement. And we just say, if everyone who's in favor of adjourning, just signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. Thank you all. See you very soon. Take care.
Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.